Guys, we're back for a fourth episode of Holy Shift. So if you're new here, welcome to Holy Shift. I'm
We're
your
so
host.
glad you're here.
I'm your host, Taylor Sappington. This is Adrian Irizarry. Did I say it right? I've been
Yes.
working on the Irizarry.
Irizarry, that's it.
Such a fun last name. If you're new here too, please go back and listen to episode 1 through 3. This is episode 4.
Welcome to Holy Shift, the podcast where medicine meets mystery and healing becomes whole.
We're your hosts, Taylor Sappington
and Adrian Irizarry.
Two clinicians, herbalists, and mystics who believe the old ways and modern medicine were never meant to live apart.
This is a space for the witches in the broom closet, the healers afraid to leave their mark, the world walkers who know they don't fit into the systems they were handed.
Here we go first, sharing our stories, our medicine, and the truth about what it really takes to reclaim your power, your health, and your place in the world.
Because the safest, most radical thing you can be is yourself.
This is your permission.
This is your portal.
This is your Holy Shift. Because all of our podcasts somewhat build off of each other. They're really incredibly informing, but entertaining. I go back and listen to our episodes. I didn't historically do this with my other podcasts. I would record them and put them out, and then I'd be done with them. And our episodes, as soon as they come out, I'm finding them, and I'm listening. Because when I listen or re-listen, I learn something new.
Yes. Well, and I think some of it too, because if you listen to the intro, it's all about coming out of the broom closet, right?
Yeah.
So I think some of it is that you and I just are like a steady stream of consciousness sometimes. And like we just bring through what listeners need to hear. And then we go back and we go, oh my God, that was so good.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
So we have an episode. We're actually going to pivot. I thought we were going to talk about the appropriation of herbs today. And then current events came to fruition, like current events bubbled to the top. And I don't think Adrian and I can overlook or move past some of these current events without speaking to them. So we will be talking about the appropriation of herbs, but I do think it is important for us as women with a largely female-based audience to talk about the war that is going on when it comes to women's bodies. And the most recent event that occurred was the revocation of the pharmaceutical utilized in abortions under the guise that they wanted to ensure that it was safe enough for consumer consumption.
Yep. I think my head exploded when I read that.
Without offering an alternative.
Yes, but that's intentional.
It absolutely is. So I think before we get into this episode, whether you are pro-choice or pro-life, you're both welcome here.
Yes.
Right? And I respect whatever your personal decision may be, what your personal stance on the subject is. I personally am pro-choice because when it comes to the bringing of life into this world, oftentimes there are elements to like a situation or a circumstance that we are unaware of.
Yes.
And the choice, Adrian, maybe you can speak to this personally too, but the choice to have an abortion, holy shit, I've been there. I got pregnant out of, I can't even believe I'm going to use this word, wedlock. I got pregnant out of wedlock. I have a grandmother who referred to my unborn child as a bastard. She was an orphan herself too, which that's a whole nother conversation in and of itself. And I chose to move forward with my pregnancy. There was an attachment. He was just as much a part of me as he was the other person. And I couldn't bring myself to part with him. Was that the easiest choice to make? Over a decade later, I'm going to tell you no.
Oh, yeah.
But there are women that are in circumstances that find them, we all know shit happens.
Yeah.
You know, and there are other atrocious circumstances where women do end up pregnant, incest, rape, we could go there, where bringing a baby to this world is probably not going to do that baby any favors. So,
Well, and it's hard. It is a really hard decision for a lot of women.
absolutely.
I see it all the time in my practice. And I even see them like years after they were forced to make a decision that their heart couldn't get on board with, but their circumstances forced the decision. And their body is still holding energetic tendrils of that. And so the first time I get them on a pelvic steaming stool, they walk out of the session completely a mess and going, "What did you do to me?"
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the first really humbling, shocking moments for me as a pelvic steaming practitioner, is that power, not only of the modality, but that energetic tie. And I have had friends who have been forced to make those decisions for financial reasons, meaning we're going to be homeless if I choose to keep this baby. And the last thing I want to do, and they still grieve the fact that they did not go through with the pregnancy. So whether you are pro-life or pro-choice, I still strongly believe that pro-choice needs to be there, because if you are pro-life, then move forward with the pregnancy. Nobody's stopping you. Nobody's telling you you can't. But the problem is when we do not have choice, when our bodies are a battleground over what we can and cannot do with them, what we can and cannot put in them, what we choose to do with them. Men's bodies are not legislated at the same level. There was this really beautiful, and again, this is not a Democratic versus Republican conversation. This is none of that bullshit. This has to do with people's lived experience, their ability to care for families, their ability to make choices about their body, pure and simple. And there was this really great, and I preface this because I'm moving into a clip around Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
She was questioning Brett Kavanaugh. I did an episode on Reproductive Rebel about this because it was a brilliant clip. And she asked him, "Tell me one law in effect that dictates what a man can do with his body." And he stumbled and tripped all over himself and tried to do the political doublespeak bullshit that we're all tired of. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. We're all tired of that crap. Like, speak plainly, asshole. But like, he wouldn't do it because he knew the answer was no.
Yeah.
And so he refused, just like so many people who've been questioned in all of 2025. Nobody can just say a simple yes or no because the no incriminates them, right? So she kept asking him, "No, I'm asking for a simple yes or no. This is a yes or no question. Can you think of a single law that governs a man's body?" And he just tripped all over himself. And she goes, "It's because the answer is no." Yet women are told what they can and cannot put in their bodies, whether they have to move forward with pregnancies or not. And there's no culpability for the partner, because it's not like she climbed on top of herself and got herself pregnant. So like, where is the accountability for the sperm donor at that point? There is none.
Right.
And so we end up in the same double standard that we have seen historically, where women's bodies get governed and men can do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
And it's bullshit.
You think Adrian's pissed about this?
Just a little bit. Because it comes back to so many things, right?
Yeah.
Our ability to make decisions around our body. We are living in a super scary time where I have jokingly said to my husband, and for those of you who are new to me, I'm in an interracial marriage. My husband is Puerto Rican. He is a United States citizen. He is Puerto Rican. But I've been telling him, "Please carry your passport card with you." And he thinks I'm joking. And I'm like, no, like, I am dead freaking serious, because the fact that you are a bilingual person, it does not matter that you are actually a U.S. citizen. It doesn't matter that you actively serve in the United States military. You are Hispanic. I do not want to have to try to find you in some detention center somewhere. But it's because we are living in a modern day witch hunt. whether it's people's ethnicity, which is horrific, and their background of nationality. It doesn't matter if they've become nationalized. I watched this doctor get hauled out of a car the other day trying to drop his kid off at daycare. He was a US citizen, but ICE didn't care. And so this child witnessed his father's window being broken and being hauled out of a car. Like, we're in a really scary period of time, and women's bodies are equally as much a battleground right now in this point in time as people's ethnic background. It's like, if you do not fit a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male mold, you get told what the hell to do with your body and when to do it. Or where you can be and where you can't, how you can express yourself and how you can't. The fact that there is no press in the White House right now, as of the time of this recording, is a huge problem, because now there is control over the narrative.
There always has been, though. Like, it's just a change, right? Like, there's always been control, which is why it's important to create variety in the things that you expose yourself to, which is why it is important to sit down and participate, or at least witness, observe, listen in on conversations that, one, you don't think apply to you. They absolutely do. I promise you they do. And two, make you uncomfortable. I mean, I didn't get to the place that I am, and I imagine it's the same for you, Adrienne, of being able to listen to multiple perspectives. I have a little Gemini in my chart. We could talk about that. But like, being able to listen to multiple perspectives, even when those perspectives make me uncomfortable.
Yes.
Right. Unless I'm continuing to choose to expose myself to a variety of different resources. That's really important. We cannot live in echo chambers. Echo chambers get us into the situation we're currently in now. Right. And I do find it fascinating that for the previous 4 years, we had a large narrative around my body, my choice, but it was associated with vaccines. And now that the narrative around my body, my choice is associated with whether or not somebody is able to discern if bringing life into this world is conducive to the baby's best well-being and their best well-being, that we have a flip in the tone of the conversation.
And I mean, I think that there is a line, right? Like, as much as I am pro-choice, I do not believe that it should be used as a form of birth control for lots of reasons.
Yep.
Emotionally, I don't agree with it. Spiritually, I don't. Physically, I don't. Like, there's a lot of reasons that I don't agree with that. However, because language can be so vague, I think that if we don't allow for there to be choice, that people can get painted into certain boxes that legally it ties their hands in terms of whether they can make decisions that they need to make. And it can be to the jeopardy of mom's health.
Which is already, can we pause there for a minute? The health of most of the mothers that I know, I'm a mom, you're a mom, right? Maternal health in the United States is in trouble.
It's dismal.
Okay, it's in trouble. I mean, I imagine based on what I've witnessed in the last year, it would be safe to say that you've definitely experienced an element of postpartum depression, perhaps postpartum anxiety. I myself, when I had Sydney at 9.5 months, he didn't even wean. He just ripped himself off the boob. I don't know how else to put it. There was no like, hey, mom, I think I'm done. You know what I mean? I wasn't producing enough because I was trying to play mom and dad and pay all the bills and right. But like, I've experienced postpartum psychosis. I've had intrusive thoughts. So like, maternal health in the United States is in deep trouble. And it's not just, I hate this saying, in 9, out 9, cooking for 9, returning to normal in 9. It took me 3 years to feel at home in my body, and 7, I think, to say I'm Taylor again.
Yeah, I witnessed this. I had a very similar experience with my first pregnancy 14 years ago. And being the breadwinner, needing to go back to work when I did, having as little support as I did, like all of those kinds of things. I had a really hard time nursing my daughter. I fought my way through it as long as I could, but I wasn't producing enough.
Yeah.
And once I started weaning, which wasn't even a start. It was abrupt, kind of like you were describing. We looked at each other one day and I just knew that was it. And she never asked again. And after that, I started to bleed and I bled for 6 months straight. And it's part of my story as to why I specialize in what I specialize in now, because I'm not unique in that experience. This time around, my son at the time of this recording is now 1. And that 9 in, 9 out really is bullshit. People put a lot of pressure on themselves because the world sends them back to work at 6 to 8 weeks because they get that green check on their chart. Like, oh, no infections in the first 6 weeks. You can go back to work.
At the 6 to 8 week mark. I don't care if you've had a vaginal delivery, especially if you've had a C-section, the amount of internal trauma that you've been subjected to is, I think, beyond most people's comprehension. C-sections are not the easy way out.
No, and honestly need a lot more support in the recovery. And like, we don't have pelvic PT as a standard of care here in the US. And like, whether you've had a vaginal birth or a cesarean, it does not matter. You need pelvic PT because your whole body is different. You have grown a human. And regardless of how you birthed them into the world, your body is fundamentally different.
Yeah.
And so this time I had a lot more support. I knew how to nourish myself. I knew how to take care of myself. But honestly, like, I couldn't control all the variables because life happens. I have teenagers. Like, there was only so much that I had in my power to control. And to be really honest, I was fighting energy-wise through every day and tried to bring myself back into work and the pace of life and all of those things as quickly as I could in a reasonable way. But I didn't really start feeling my energy feel more normal or feel like exercising beyond strapping my son to my back and going for a walk, which is weight bearing. That's not a slouch thing to do when you have stretched out all your abdominal muscles and your pelvic floor is taking a hit. That's exercise, but like, people don't look at it that way. And I was saying to my husband the other day, I was like, I was almost 11 months before I started feeling like, oh, I'm not drowning in the pace of my life. I feel like I can keep up with the pace of my life. But my body has essentially shown me too that I pushed too hard too fast. That I had too much going on emotionally and physically. And I had some health things show up that were like, hey girl, here's your sign. You need to really like reevaluate the way your body is working. So now let's put that on top of, it is not my body, my choice. The government is now calling the shots on my body, yet we have no maternal health care support. Like virtually none. I interviewed somebody who is an OB and a perinatal mental health professional, and she warned me. She goes, when you start to wean with your son, because you had such a long journey and so much heartache trying to bring him into the world, watch how your emotional state is going to show up for you when you start to wean him. And if she hadn't said that to me when I started weaning him a month ago, I would have thought I was like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs because my emotions were all over the place. And at least I had that heads up, but a lot of women don't. We're being forced back into the workforce before we really can because we cannot financially afford our friggin' lives these days with 2 incomes. And you're trying to navigate the fact that now you have to drop this little person off at daycare. Maybe you're breastfeeding, maybe you're not at that point. No shade either way. It's just a statement of fact that your body just did the biggest thing it's ever done in your entire life. And there's no support network. There's no financial support because we are not a country that does any sort of like child subsidy like they do in Canada and other industrialized countries. We're the only industrialized country that doesn't. We don't have paid maternity leave. If you are blessed to work for one of the companies that is smart enough to realize that's important, congratulations, because you are the minority. Like, there's just so many things. Like, we don't have support yet. The government is telling us that we have to have a baby if we get pregnant, regardless of what the circumstances are.
I really do think that there's a theme here, though, like thread that needs to be pulled. Okay. And this is going to go into Some might perhaps call it a conspiracy. You can call it whatever you want. I've done enough research. It's fine. Go do your own research and then we can come back and talk. But the United States is governed by admiral law. And if you don't know what admiral law is, go look it up, right? When you have a baby, and that baby is going to get me put on some fucking list, Adrienne. When you have a baby, okay, you have a live certificate of birth, and then you have a birth certificate. And there's a difference between the two, okay? As soon as you sign that birth certificate and your child is offered a social security number, you have essentially transferred power from yourself to the state. Your child now becomes a container or a ward for and of the state. So when you look at what's going on politically and the way with which our system operates through a workforce and taxation, right, it is essential and imperative to have people funneled into the workforce and paying taxes. And how do you do that? When you have a large majority of the population that is choosing to proceed with family planning conservatively or not at all, you remove the choice.
Yep.
And that's a pretty dark thing to think about.
Yes, but it takes it a step further into what we were talking about around the history of women's witch hunts. I mean, yes, there were men, but witch hunts, man, like
the majority of them were female.
The majority were female, and it had to do with control.
Yeah, this has been happening for thousands of years. So ever since societies shifted from matriarchal or partnership-based systems where creation, intuition, and cyclical wisdom were sacred and utilized, to patriarchal hierarchies that feared and saw control of that same power, right? If you trace to, I asked Adrienne if I could do some astrology here, right? But if you trace it astrologically, you can see the timeline in the collective for movements of Pluto, and Saturn, the planets of power and structure. Sure. So it began when humanity started separating spirit from flesh, these two particular transits, we'll call them, right? Labeling the body, especially the female body, as something sinful, as something dirty, as something dangerous. And in ancient societies, like pre-Roman societies, the goddess was not just a figure. Right? She was the embodiment of life itself. And we have women that are really starting to tap into that ideology. And I don't think it's an ideology. I think it's an embodied knowing, and women are just starting to awaken that. And we came back. I think I've said this in every episode. You killed us all and we came back. Like, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It eventually finds itself back into physical form. We came back. Right? And we're going to start talking about it and continue talking about it. We might just have a few decades of our life that we have to awaken or wake up to it. But we had temples of Venus. We had, I'm going to say it wrong, but Inanna, Inanna.
Inanna. Yep.
Yeah. Isis was honored, okay? Yep. Obviously associated with women's cycles, sexuality, fertility. This was all portals of divine power. Women were the medicine keepers. They were the seers. They were the timekeepers of the moon. And then the systemic dismantling came. The witch trials, the medicalization of birth, we could spend some time on that too. Again, C-sections really should only be utilized in emergent situations. It blows my mind in the United States. One, the C-section rate blows my mind. You guys do understand, and I am probably going to really upset an OB here, but so be it. They're surgeons. Surgeons want to take scalpel to skin. That's what they're trained to do. And bless the OBs that are trained to do those things in times of emergence. Like my son wouldn't be here without a C-section, or an OB that knew how to perform one, right? And at the same time, when you look at monetary compensation for the hospital and the provider, C-sections are a lot more expensive than vaginal delivery.
Well, that's just like IVF. That's just like the fact that we are having a huge wave. All the Gen X women are stepping into the perimenopausal path right now. And we're seeing astronomically high levels of people going, HRT will serve everything and solve everything.
Nope.
And yay. And it's like, hold on. Like, I've had more questions about HRT in the last 2 weeks than like I have in the last 7 years of my practice. And it's, again, it's something that can be an exchange of money. And that's where herbal wisdom, like, this was the medicine of the people. It should, again, be the medicine of the people. But that's where the compensation goes to the wise woman who knows how to use herbs instead of to a pharmaceutical company. And that affects their bottom line.
Not only that, like herbs take time. Herbs are a relationship. Yes. Herbs operate within an ecosystem because they are an ecosystem. And we live in a world where we expect instant gratification and instant results. And pharmaceuticals are fantastic at manipulating your physiology to give you an instantaneous output. But that doesn't actually mean that the pharmaceutical you're taking, HRT included, is actually addressing the issue at hand. In fact, in most instances, you got to walk me through the nightmare that was my experience with HRT, and it was abbreviated, right? Like, but in most instances, HRT is going to create more problems than it's going to quote unquote solve, because it puts your body in a state of, it's called alpha state of stress, right? You're providing your body with a final product, and the entire cascade somehow has to miraculously, in reverse, figure out how to course correct for the amplification and the production of this sex hormone, which is the byproduct of a multitude of cascades, right? And your body scrambles to do so. And if you're under-resourced, which your lack of hormones tells us you're under-resourced, right? But if you're under-resourced, your body is not going to be able to adequately respond to the amplification of the existence of this particular byproduct in your ecosystem. And guess what? There are going to be symptoms associated with that. But there's another pharmaceutical for that. Don't you worry.
Yes. And well, and I've had women who have gone on HRT. I was at a festival a few weeks ago and I was doing demonstrations, asking questions, that kind of thing. And this woman said to me, she goes, "Are you familiar with HRT?" Which is a hormone replacement therapy for anybody who does not know what that abbreviation stands for. And I said, yes. I said, "Do you have questions about it?" She goes, "Well, I've been put on it." She goes, "And now I have questions about it." And I said,
"Oh, it's in reverse."
And she goes, "Well, I haven't had a period in 2 years and I was still having hot flashes and they put me on HRT and now I'm cycling again." She goes, "What the hell is this?" And it's like, I said, well, I said, you're essentially giving the body the hormone that it needs to do that.
Yeah.
I was like, there's a reason why there's this transition that happens. And sure, is the transition symptomatic? Yes, if you don't know how to support your body through it. Yes, if you don't make any changes to your diet, lifestyle, rhythm of moving through the world, management of stress, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, it's going to be symptomatic. Why? Because your brain is going through a huge neural reworking, because you are now looking at a totally different cocktail of hormones that are happening in your system that affects the way your brain shows up. So yes, you're going to have some emotional times. You're going to feel warm sometimes. Like, yes, it's not going to be like sunshine and freaking roses all the time. However, it can be more often than not if you understand what your body needs, if you know how to support her in a meaningful way, and we get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And we provide ourselves with punctuations in our stressful lives where we get to actually stop and stare at the wall for 5 minutes. Like, I don't even care what it is that you choose to do in those few moments, but like giving yourself starts and stops to the stress in your life becomes paramount during this time frame. And again, we just want to pill for a symptom, make it go away. Great. But you can only ignore that for so long. And then your body's going to start yelling at you in another way.
Input equals output, guys. So there's no free lunch when whatever the input is. So the input could be joy, and the output is this experience of happiness and elevated sensation. The input could be alcohol, and the output could at least temporarily be lack of inhibition, but eventually it's going to be headache and dehydration. And right, the input could be light, and the output could eventually, you could be feeling energized, and you spend enough time outside, you're going to get tired because there's a detoxification element, right? So input equals output. And when we remove the element of empathy, when we remove our emotional attachment to the whole equation, input and output, we're able to see all of these things for what they are, which is data points. And data points are really helpful. I'm going to say this, given that my practice for a long time was built off of test, don't guess. And now I'm kind of just like, give me your birth chart and I'll tell you exactly what your test is going to say. And you don't have to spend thousands of dollars, right? Same thing with Adrienne. She's going to pattern you and you're not going to have to spend thousands of dollars, right? But in reality, if we remove all of the empathy and the attachment to these symptoms, and stop personalizing it. Like, oh, I did this. I got myself here. It's all me, right? The data points are helpful in guiding you to the next steps that you have to take. And when you don't personalize the pivot, you amplify the outcome, right? So this all folds into the medicalization of birth, the control of reproduction, the demonization of sensuality, which I think is still something that we feel very confused about as a society. Like we have the overexpression in a lot of, I'm not going to lie, like I don't think that this is an opinion. You might be throwing mud at me through the mic. It's totally okay. Right. But like, I don't think that sensuality is predominantly expressed by getting yourself half fucking naked and getting on Instagram. Sorry. Like, I don't think that's the embodiment of sensuality. I think that you're objectifying yourself like the rest of the world has taught you to be objectified. And now we're just perpetuating a narrative. My girl, you are way more powerful than booty shaking on the internet. Right. Yeah. And if you want to do it, I'm not going to judge you. I'm going to observe. I'm a human. I look at these things too, and they're fascinating to me. I'm like, well, you go. I wouldn't have the confidence to do that, perhaps, or maybe I just don't feel comfortable sharing my booty on the internet. I don't know what it is, but these things were not historically isolated events, and they're still weaved into the cloth of culture that we, at least in the West, I'm sure we could talk about the Middle East to a degree too, like in the dismantling of female rights in places like Afghanistan, and how we've gone from the 1970s to today where women can't even talk in public without facing public persecution. But these were not isolated events. They were strategic erasures of the creative current that flows through the feminine.
The generative, the creativity, the ability to, honestly, the ability to speak across aisles. Like, that's one gift that we have really lost, is the ability to be an orator. And the ability to, regardless of whether you agree with another opinion, be able to actually close your mouth long enough and listen to the other perspective and then try to find a compromise. I don't feel like, as we're sitting here in a government shutdown, we have lost the ability to compromise and find middle ground. And that polarization is scary as a woman, because you have women on both sides, women who are mouthpieces for the patriarchy because they are so saturated in that belief system. And often they're saturated in that belief system because they don't have firsthand experience of what it's like to be on the other side.
It's funny you say that, because when I became a single mom, one of the first things I said to myself reflectively was, you become what you judge. I was raised in a family where if we saw a single mom, she must have been loose, right? And like, she must have put herself in a position to really deserve it. And like, so like, that's some of the ideology that I was brought up in. And then I became what everybody judged.
Oh, me too.
And
I grew up in a French Catholic family, man. Like, divorce was not a thing. You were to stay married until you died.
And then you experience it for yourself. And you're like, this is actually nothing like what I thought it was. I found
Mhm.
myself in a really awful situation and I got out of it. And that takes a lot of courage and power, right?
Hard.
It's so hard. And
So hard.
the character builder, right?
Yep.
And then in the face of all of the adversity in the world, I chose to bring my son earthside, right? Sydney really chose me. I really do believe that. There's a reason I only had one baby. Maybe that'll be a conversation at some point, right? But like Sydney is karma for me. And I mean that in the best way possible, right? But even throughout the duration of my pregnancy, I was met with so much judgment. I was met with so much disdain. I was met with so much assumption. I will never forget, I posted about this the other day, but I had a male colleague, white, middle-aged, okay, very religious. Again, here that comes again, right? God is great. Consciousness is great. Having a relationship with a Christ consciousness is a beautiful thing. I think religion is where things get a little murky. And he looked at me while we were, at a luncheon waiting for other colleagues to show up. And he goes, "So are you going to keep it?" I'm like, "What? Your baby. Are you going to keep it?" I'm like, "What do you say to that?" I was 27. Like, I was a little shocked that I was being sidelined with this question. I was like, "Why would I not keep my baby?" "Well, you're a single mom, Taylor." "Okay. Kids statistically do better in a 2-parent household." According to who?
Yeah.
But like that was a lived experience for me. And I was like, the propensity of that interaction, I will never, ever forget his name, what he looks like, where it happened, how I felt. And that's intentional. I think I needed to know how that felt because it just built to the whole like seeing things from multiple perspectives and never judging a book by its cover. But this is the kind of thing that women deal with all the time. And pregnancy reconnects women to their bodies in a certain sense. So I do think it's important to talk about that. Even when women choose to not move forward with a pregnancy to full term and have the baby, I do think there are elements or moments of reconnection that are important for that woman in that particular time in her life.
Yes. Mine was at 27 also.
No
And
Saturn return.
oh, yes. My Saturn return, that was a bumpy ride. I was not in a healthy relationship. I was not in a healthy place in time in my life, physically or emotionally. I got pregnant with my daughter, and anybody who has endometriosis, I'd been struggling with it for years. Irregular cycles, painful periods, you name it. So like I totally did not ever expect that I would be able to have this baby. So she was shocking to me and reconnected me with my body. I love how you use that phrase because that's exactly what she was for me. Is she essentially taught me that I was a woman and I was not a little man, that I was trying to move through the world like a little man. And
so many of us do. It's what we're taught to do. We're taught to be, we're praised for productivity.
Well, and I also came up in that generation just after Title IX, right? Where like, if your mother didn't have the ability to go to college, like you had to go to college to vindicate your mom.
Right.
Like, and you have these opportunities because of this fight that happened just ahead of you. And having girls and boys sports was like relatively new when I was coming through school. So like it was like maybe a decade in its existence at that point, which is baby, like small, not preteen.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like the United States in their existence. We're in our tween phase, guys.
Yeah, in its angsty one. But like there were so many things that were like put upon me. It was like we fought so hard for this thing and now you have to do something with this thing. And I'm grateful I had a chance to go to college. I'm grateful for the opportunities that I had. It's not that I'm not. It's just that there were a lot of assumptions put upon me so that by the time I ended up in this pregnancy situation, in this unhealthy relationship, I was expected to stay in it because damn it, you're not going to get divorced. You're having a kid now. And that was hard. That was really hard. And I tried because again, I grew up drinking the Catholic Kool-Aid. that once you get married, you're married for always and you just make it work, and your household is supposed to have two parents. Because like, I didn't even know what divorce was. This is how naive I was, Taylor. I didn't even know what divorce was until I was in high school. And I had a friend, one of my close friends, who was like, yeah, my mom and dad are getting divorced when we graduate from high school. I think we were sophomores at the time. And I'm like, that's like 3 years from now. Why would you say it like that? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't understand like why you'd wait so long. Like, why are you staying together right now if everybody knows that you're miserable? Right. So I had a hard time like wrapping my brain around it. And not going to lie, I was a little judgy of it at the time because, again, I grew up in a nuclear family and
You become what you judge.
yes. And like, I was the first in my family to get divorced. And I still have family members that don't have the same relationship with me that they had before because they still judge the decisions I made. The last conversation I had with my grandmother before she passed away, she thought she was talking to my aunt and not to me. And she made some disparaging comments around, I thought Adrienne was so smart, but there were some really poor decisions that were made on her part because she still was judging me for that decision. So it's like, until you walk a mile in someone else's shoes, you really don't understand their lived experience. And this is why women's bodies really cannot be a political pugil stick.
It's interesting too, right? Because when we create policy around perception and personal preference, let's face it, like a lot of what's going into these policies is personal preference, personal belief, like that should not be anywhere near policy construction, right? But we literally place ourselves in the seat of God going, I know every element that's influencing this person's life, seen and unseen, right? And I know that every aspect or every situation in their life and the outcome of it and why it's there. Like literally, if we want to get very esoteric in our conversation, some people signed on to go through the abortion, right? Or the single parent pregnancy like I did. Like at this, where I sit in my life, I understand it all now from a karmic perspective. It makes sense. The geometry has presented itself. It couldn't have been any other way. And if somebody tried to interfere with that, eventually it was going to come back. Because it's something that my soul, not Taylor sitting here talking to you, my soul signed up for in this lifetime. There was a lesson that I had to learn. And we don't untangle ourselves from karma until we learn the lesson. So to think that generalized policies are a good idea for unique and individual experiences kind of blows my mind. The further I get into quantum medicine too, and the study of quantum physics, I'm like, us humans are real egotistical. Like, wow.
We are. We
Yeah.
really are. I mean, this is just like the I can get you pregnant. Like that statement, I heard that out of an IVF doctor's mouth. And I was like,
Interesting.
I'm getting pregnant. I'm not staying pregnant. So how is that going to solve my problem? Number one. And number two, I can get you pregnant. Wow, that's a lot of hubris, bro.
Ew.
Like, yeah.
So this energetic, like if we speak energetically about all of this, right? This war has been waged, if you will, for roughly 5,000 years, okay? Yes. Since the fall of the goddess, centered cultures around 3000 BCE. It's been a slow erasure of body-based wisdom that has been replaced by systems of domination, logic. We literally worship the brain, which drives me insane, and disconnection from nature, right? But here's the key pivot that I want everybody to consider, right? The war on women's bodies is not just ancient, it's cyclical. What are we, ladies? We're cyclical beings, right? That mimic the cycles of nature. And every generation of women who remembers, resists, reclaims, if you will, her creative power, reopens that ancient temple. It's not just a fight back, it's a resurrecting of the truth. And right now, we're in Pluto and Aquarius. It just went direct recently. major event. If you don't follow astrology, you don't have to understand astrology to understand how pivotal this moment is going to be. This war, if you will, is entering a new phase. Technology, gender politics, the collective nervous system. Okay, these are all arenas that the body's wisdom is being tested again. We're in a new era, and the feminine is demanding reintegration. So have we recognized, like with the rise of AI, the retreat of certain people, groups, societies, and the reclamation of things like community, the revisiting of scriptures that were erased and eliminated from the Bible, right? The revisiting of Mary Magdalene and her participation in the historical outline, if you will. So like the womb, symbolic or literal, is rising as the teacher of embodiment in an increasingly disembodied world.
Oh, that's so beautifully said. It's so true. She's always been the governor, though, right? And when we think about our connection with our body, there's usually this disembodied head kind of experience. And I was just talking with a group of women that I work with a couple times a month, and we were talking about this idea of the wise woman standing at the crossroads, and that it's the simplicity of being able to like really tune into that heart-centered knowing. If you get out of the ego mind and you work through heart-centered knowing, what do you know to be the truth? And in today's world, we need that skill and that level of discernment more than ever, because of this reliance and this emphasis that's put on this ego knowing, this brain knowledge. But I can tell you, like, I have had so many really pivotal moments in my life where my body was screaming at me, run away, don't do it. And like my brain was, my Aquarius brain was like, I can logic my way through this entire thing. And no, this seems like a completely logical.
Relatable.
Shut up, body. Mm-hmm. And then later, my body goes, see, I told you.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's every suppression of women's cycles, every shaming of softness. We talked about judgment on our last episode, right? The shaming of pleasure, the shaming of weight or age, right, is a distinct attempt to control the source of creative power, the womb. Right. And when women are disconnected from the womb and we're living from a cerebral state and place, we are disconnected from not one, but two of the most powerful electromagnetic frequencies that exist within our world. Do we really think in hunter-gatherer societies they were bringing out spreadsheets to figure out like who was going to go gather this, who was going to hunt this, what the weight of the last harvest was, what they needed for the entire community at that point? Like, we didn't see, I think it was the Industrial Revolution, perhaps it was the Scientific Revolution. We didn't see an introduction of the glorification of intellect until recently. Mm-hmm. And you can't tell me that wasn't intentional too, because when we live from a heart-centered, intuition or gut-centered place, life kind of flows effortlessly. But when we get all heady about shit, tell me y'all have never been heady about shit. Right? Things start to get complicated. We trip over ourselves. Things are clunky and clumsy. They're not seamless. They don't flow. So this over-centering of the intellect is really something that is quite concerning to me. And the further I get into my own personal studies of myself, the best classroom you will ever sit in is the one you choose to sit in with your body. Okay. But also as I get further into astrology, I will forever be a student of life for that. That is just like such a deep, juicy, rich language that I don't think you ever master. It masters you, and then it brings you to the next level. And then I like fold in the quantum layer on that. I'm like, I don't know shit. I know a lot, but I don't know shit.
I feel like the more I do this work that I do as well, I feel the same way. It's like, wow, all these things that I thought I knew. And I've watched the evolution of myself as a practitioner over time also. And it's like, the more I understand, the deeper I go with esoteric understanding, energetic and frequency medicine understanding, like all of those kinds of things. I'm like, wow, like I have so much reverence for how brilliant the universe is and how small I am in that whole experience. And yet the energy that I bring, because I know that there are people listening to this. I mean, we started with heavy legislative shit. And I know that at the beginning, people are probably like, I feel like I can't make a difference in all of this.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you can. So even though we may feel small in the grand scheme of things, the frequency we hold, the field that we hold, has an effect on others around us. And so if we all move collectively, like even 5% of the population, if we started operating from a heart-centered place, how the collective would shift. But it takes every single one of us embodying that and being able to trust our inner knowing. And that shit's hard because it's a relearning of what we've been taught.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a Buddhist principle, and I don't think I'm going to say it as eloquently as it would perhaps spoken like true to term. But the Buddhist principle essentially captures that if you as an individual take care of what's going on in between your ears, right, and what's happening within the four walls of your home, that is the difference that you make on the collective. Because if we all keep our front porch clean, the neighborhood looks nice.
Yep.
Right. So this idea, I really love the activists. Like I love their heart. I love their center on mission, like their mission. And sometimes I have to sit back and go, you're screaming into the void. Right? Like the things that we actually need to change are not going to happen when we organize and come together in a group. They're going to happen when we go home, we clean up our shit in between our ears and within the four walls of our home, and then we ask our neighbor if they need help. Like small ripple, big impact.
Yeah. It's true. My girlfriend said that to me not all that long ago, not in the same way, but the same idea, because I was laying on the floor of my office going, I just want to help everybody, right? So the Aquarian humanitarian in me, right? Like, I just want to help everybody. I feel like you could live your life without having period pain. Fertility challenges don't have to be an issue. If you do not want to get pregnant, there are ways that you can do this without drugs. Like, I truly believe that our wisdom keeping, our birthright knowledge has intentionally been withheld, and so many women are disempowered as a result of it. And so my whole mission in life is to put the power back in the hands of the people. Well, every so often that feels like a really huge thing. And it is. Yeah. And I feel the weight of that, like in the cells of my body. And so my girlfriend was saying to me, I just love her because she always talks me down off the ledge. She goes, but Adrienne, she goes, think about the people you've worked with one-on-one. Every single person you've worked with takes that information home and shares it with their daughter, shares it with their girlfriend, shares it with their girlfriend's daughter. And she goes, so for the however many 100 people had come through my doors at that point, because this was a few years ago now, she goes, every single one of those people is like a nodal point where they then take what you taught them out into the world. And it's true. Like, we're all threads in this really big, interconnected, beautiful spider web. And if we take care of our little corner of the world, corner of the collective, and keep that energy high vibe, and share that energy with others, things around you begin to shift.
Well, and the greatest form of activism, part of me, is actually creativity. There's that quote where, like, the more chaotic the world becomes, the more we need you to create. We need more art. We need more music. We need more dance. We need more joy. We need more laughter. So, like, creation is activism. And the more women that reclaim their rhythm, the womb cycle, the rest, oh my God, how many people struggle with rest? Ladies, how many of you feel guilty for, today is day 1 of my cycle. Okay, I'm going to get off this episode. I'm going to go take some happy juice. I'm going to take a little nappy poo with my dogs. because it's day 1 of my cycle. And sitting here talking with Adrian is the highlight of my day. This is something I so love to do, but I'm going to have to go recharge. I'm already doing heavy lifting behind the scenes, if you will. We're under reconstruction for a few days, and then we'll be back up and running. We're renovating. But the more women that reclaim that rest cycle, the more women that reclaim pleasure, and pleasure does not always have to be accompanied by sensuality and sexuality. Like pleasures can be simple. It can be sitting out in the garden with a tea, listening to the birds and letting your mind stare at the sky, letting the mind screen go blank, right? The more resistance we have to this type of stuff, the more we're going to have extraction and burnout, right? The more embodiment we have of this stuff, that's creative activism.
I find that my best thoughts come in when I let my brain be quiet. Yes. Oh my God. I do my best thinking in the freaking shower.
I got a whiteboard for my shower because I was like,
that's like, brilliant.
It's like one of those like shitty little ones that sticks to tiles, right? But like every time I had something come up, I'm like, babe, I need you to come turn my voice memo on, right? But like that takes you out of flow.
Yeah.
So like if you have something that you can just write things down, because the shower is a place where I'm like, I'm writing on the steamy walls and I'm like, I need to take a picture of this so I don't forget it. But yeah, like when you're not expecting or anticipating it, that's when you get your greatest ideas.
And we all have this potential and this ability, and we become disconnected when we're in the matrix, so to speak.
Yeah,
right?
It's all about unplugging. It's all about unplugging. It's called egregores. So like if we want to get into a quantum sidebar, egregores are communities or pockets of consciousness that we all plug into, right? So money is an egregore for the collective, and there's a whole bunch of shit tied to it, right? Fear is an egregore for the collective, and there's a whole bunch of shit tied to that, right? Shame, guilt, poverty. There's all of these egregores that exist, and it's almost as if we're born automatically plugged into them, right? Because whatever our parents are plugged into, we're essentially plugged into. And then we pick up some more egregores or consciousnesses, bodies of consciousnesses, collectives of consciousness based on what we're subjected to in the rearing process, right? But unplugging from these collective consciousnesses, it's so important for us on an individual level, but it's also important so that it can reorganize. Again, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just reorganizes itself. So the less people plugged into poverty, fear, shame, right? Where does that go? It's got to go somewhere. The more people that are plugged into joy, happiness, flow, well, a vacuum exists. And this really does come down to that concept that we were just talking about of making sure what happens in between your ears and within the four walls of your home, making sure that's in a really good place. One person unplugging shifts the entire consciousness.
I love that. See, this is why we wanted to do this show, because we talk about this stuff like offline all the time. Yeah. And for me, it's like intellectual and soul food. And so I hope these conversations are the same for you as well, because there is a much bigger picture that's happening. And it's really easy when you are feeling very anxious and overwhelmed by the media and what's being said and what's not being said, and where does the truth lie, and how does that affect my family? Like, these are all things that I've heard my clients say. It's all things that have been uttered in the four walls of my own home. And really, our biggest act of defiance to the system is to take care of our side of the street.
Yeah.
And if we all do that, the shift is immeasurable. Mm-hmm. And in today's world, where bodies are a battleground, whether it's the gender thing, the race thing, the reproductive thing, like, our bodies are a battleground these days. And the way that we make headway is through how we care for our side of the street.
Yeah. Well, if we loop astrology in, right, and we tie it to the collective, we've got Pluto and we've got Venus. Pluto rules transformation. It rules the underworld, while Venus governs receptivity and value. So the body is the bridge between those two when you look at it through the astrological lens. The collective is in a deep Pluto Venus confrontation cycle right now. Okay, we are being asked to reclaim what is sacred in our flesh. We are being asked to value the feminine current again. This is why it feels like war, because power structures crumble when women remember that their body is the altar, not the battlefield.
Ooh, again, beautifully said. The altar, not the battlefield. Oh, that even flips the frame for me, because I feel very much like women's bodies, or just bodies in general, have become a huge battlefield.
Yeah.
But it's true. Like the reverence. And deep down, if we quiet our minds and turn off the chatter bullshit in our mind, and we tap into our body, we like clear our mind, we drop in and really listen to our heart space, we know this to be true. The truth lies there. We might question it because we've been taught to question it. And that's when the ego brain needs to sit down and be quiet for a few minutes. But if you really tap in deep in your heart that this is truth.
Your body is a defined partner. So like every ache, input versus output, we talked about this earlier, right? Every ache, every craving, every bleed is a form of communication and the creative force whispering through the biology. I mean, this message cannot be overstated. I mean, if you take it a little bit further, for those of you that know astrology and you look at your sixth house, the sixth house of service gets to be reimagined, right? Where devotion, this is your routine is so important. The first place I go with anybody when I sit with them on a call is their sixth house. I can talk to you all about how do you hold stress, what your familial ancestor patterns look like, your subconscious. None of that shit matters if I don't know what your day-to-day looks like. And if you're not honoring your day-to-day, all of those houses are going to be lit up, right? So when we look at the sixth house and we reimagine it, this is where devotion to the body becomes devotion to your purpose. And when women heal their relationship with their bodies, they heal the relationship with, or the world's relationship, I should say, with creation.
You talk to me all the time about my sixth house and Pisces all the time.
You're a sponge, right? And we love that you're a sponge. It's really important for you to maintain that element of sensitivity. And we get to build boundaries around it because that sensitivity gets to be reserved for particular people, namely yourself, but not others. And when we don't have beautiful boundaries around something as sensitive as a Piscean placement, which is the most sensitive constitution in the zodiac, by the way, Leo is the strongest constitution when we look at that, the signs. And then you've got Pisces, who's water, and they're a bit floaty. They're dreamy. They're elusive. They walk between worlds. They can see things through rose-colored glasses. Piscean energy, too, when it's ungrounded, can be escapism. It can be shopping and drugs and alcohol, right? And Neptune rules that. And Neptune is the governance over your immune system. But like Pisces is literally the foundation your life is built off of, right? It rules the ankles and the feet. So like if we don't have boundaries around something so porous as Pisces, and then we don't have emotional or energetic cleansing on a routine basis, the foundation of your life is going to be shoddy at best.
Yeah. And I'm so porous that when I take on other people's stress and anxiety, it makes my blood pressure go up, like literally. So
yeah.
I threw myself in there as an example because I knew that you would be able to expand on like, this is how it can tangibly show up.
Oh, yeah.
In somebody's body.
Dorsiflexion, inflexibility, right? Sensitivity in the immune system, addiction in any capacity, feeling emotionally overwhelmed 9 times out of 10, they're not your emotions to carry. It's really important to not only, water is so important for water signs. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you dispel negative energy through water. So like the water holds what your body is not supposed to. So it's really important to be aware of what, say, your sixth house looks like, because that's what's going to determine your day-to-day. I'm Capricorn. A totally different vibe, right? With a Mars placement nonetheless. So like what I have to be really careful with is boundaries in a different sense. I will work myself to the bone and then I will lash myself in the most unkind way when I get to the end of my day and I don't feel like I've done enough. I am like burnout to a T. Like, oh, I didn't do enough. It's that not enoughness.
And I get to burn out because of the porousness.
Yes. Right. So when you learn how to work with it, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
my morning's going to be structured like this. And then I'm going to take a sun break. And then my afternoon's going to run on a 3-hour span. And then I'm going to take tea break. And then my evening's going to look like this. But I'm going to step out of my office because I don't need to grind myself to the bone in order to prove to anyone, most importantly myself, that I'm worthy of existing as a human being.
Yes, I see myself in that as well.
So when you hear the noise, okay, the judgment, the fear, the rules, I would encourage those of you listening to ask yourself this question, just like I think Adrienne and I ask ourselves this question: whose voice is trying to tell me that I don't belong in my skin? And then come back home, right? Place your hand over your belly, breathe into the womb space, right? And remember that this is the original creation process. This like hustle, grind, bro culture ain't it. The revolution that we're really all seeking is in the simplicity to returning to self.
Yes. And I'm going to take that womb piece a step further. Chinese medicine recognizes the Bao Mai, which is the connection between the heart and the womb. And when we're in our childbearing years, whether you choose to bear a child or not, you are moving that energy from heart to womb for the creation of life. When you move across the threshold of perimenopause and stop your period in menopause, that Bao Mai changes direction. And you go from womb to heart. Yeah. And it's women in that phase of their life are so much more deeply intuitive. And I mean, you have intuition no matter what. It comes on board, whether we want to deny its existence or not. It is there. It's that whole, like, I just had a gut feeling. I don't know how I knew this, but that's your intuition talking. And I think it's really beautiful. Often when I check in with myself in the morning, I'll put my hands over my heart, or I'll put one over my womb and one over my heart. And I'll just breathe into those spaces. And the question I ask myself when I start first thing in the morning is, how do I feel today? And I have to do that because I'm so porous. Yep. Because if I know where my baseline is, it took me frigging years to understand that. And once I understood that, all of a sudden, I had a level of discernment that I could tell when other people's stuff was influencing the way I felt.
Non-locality is a thing. I just want to like bend your brain a little bit more, right? Like before we sign off this episode, right? But non-locality is a thing. You don't have to be in the same room. You don't have to be in the same house. You don't have to be on the same block, the same street, or in the same state for someone else's energy to find you and impact you. Y'all ever been in a shitty situation with a friend, right? And you can feel the shade from far away. That's a really good example of non-locality. So this notion that we have to be directly impacted by somebody, that's also a fallacy. So it is really important to know where your baseline is in the morning, so you do understand from a discerning perspective what exactly it is that you're working with. But this all stemmed from policy over women's bodies, right? And when we get down to the base of it, we can't access these gifts and tools when somebody is constantly legislating over our body.
I agree to a point, and I want to challenge that also, because I actually think that's where our true power lies.
It is, but most people don't have the capacity at this point to discern, right? And that's where it comes from. Not that it doesn't innately exist within you. I 100% agree with you. It's more or less like people are constantly outsourcing themselves to other people because that is what we have been taught. It's not going to stop. They're going to continue to do what they do. The behavior is historical and it's cyclical, as we've talked about in this podcast. So you let them do you. Or do them, pardon me, and you go do you, right? Like you go tap into the innate powers that exist within you and stop outsourcing that power to other people.
Amen, sister.
Yeah. That was a good episode. I hope you guys hung with us for the entire time. Hour and 11 minutes. I'm so proud if you made it to this point. It was a good, juicy episode, though. Hopefully we carried you all the way there. So we will be meeting with you again next week. I'm not even going to throw out a topic because something could happen in the next week and completely derail where we want to go next week. So until next time, guys, stay well.